Go ahead and if you want to just go into it, this is the Hammer Podcast. So we have Simon here from England,
Hi.
our fellow brother here. Yes. All right. So let's get
Awesome,
started.
man.
What are we gonna? What's the agenda, fellas?
I think just talking about Agape, right?
Yes.
Well, I mean, maybe some backstory so people kind of understand where this even came from. So
Yes. What as far as the citizens of the United Kingdom, what are
speaking
their
on behalf of all of them.
yes? What are the thoughts of Englishmen and English women on American troubled teen homes?
It was quite interesting because I've started speaking about this with a few people I know, and every time I kind of mention Agape and places like that, everybody's heard of the Paris Hilton story. So that's really populated across the country. It's quite difficult on this side of the pond to understand how the champion of the free world can allow such a thing to exist in its own land. And I was reading an article on a website earlier. What was it called now? Youthrights.org. And it talks about how the Constitution fails children in America because it allows the transfer of ownership of children and forcibly training them like dogs. That's an American website about teen youth rights. And the phrase that occurred to me is it's almost like until you become 18, you're like human chattel. That it's almost as though you're still back in the slave times until you become 18. And I think
Right.
there needs to be a push to recognise that children do have rights and should have rights, and because it's fundamentally important to society, because the children are the future, the children are the people of tomorrow, and so to deny them rights is
Right.
quite troubling.
Well, the thing about kids' rights in America is they're limited. Okay,
Yeah.
like whatever we do, me and James have done a podcast with boys who were 16, and in order to get them to come on for legal purposes, you got to get their parents' permission. If their parents say no, he can't do it, well, then he can't do it. So usually 18 is the age when they can say, well, screw you, I can do anything I want to do, and that's true. I'm not sure how it is over there in England.
Well, over here in England, when we look at the term medical consent, we have something called Gillick's competence, which is something that happened in the 80s, where the law recognised that a minor can give consent for medical treatment against the consent of their parents.
Wow.
So for example, if a child can go and see their doctor without parental permission, they don't need to be accompanied. If they're considered in the doctor has that ability to decide if they're competent to make that visit, and that's quite important, because if you're living in an abusive home and you want to go and see a doctor, typically an abusive parent won't allow that. So if you can do that without that restriction, then that's better in your interest, better in the interest of the child.
Oh.
And I think all these places, they consider them medical centers, almost like medical centers, and the the forceful admission into them is the parents being able to forcefully admit them into these facilities. What I found that was interesting is there's one state in America where they've altered the law, so the age of medical consent in this state is now 13. So a parent can no longer force a child above the age of 13 into any of these programs.
What state is that?
Washington State.
Washington State.
That's right.
Oh, I thought it would have been Kentucky.
But that, when I spoke to James about this, but when I looked into it further, their child services do still send children to these facilities, but it has to be done through a court order. It can't just be a parent's decision. And interestingly, a child could refer themselves to one of these programs, if they wanted to. But it gives them a lot more protection. I can't understand in 2021 why the same protection doesn't exist in all the other 49 states of America. I mean, it does seem, from this side of the Atlantic, it seems bonkers that those rigid views are still in place in terms of.
Well, the thing about America is, if you got the money, you can do whatever you want. So, if parents are, if the kid is acting up or trying to, hey, I'm going to pay this amount of money, I'm going to send them to this home, and that's perfectly legal. You know what I mean? Yeah. And most of them, I'm not saying all of them, but most of them are religious homes. So when it comes to religious homes, with the separation of church and state, the state has no jurisdiction on religious homes. That's one of the problems, for one thing, because the state. I mean, the religious, Agape, for instance, is independent fundamental Baptists, and I don't know how familiar you are with independent fundamental Baptists, but they're monsters. You know what I mean? They're monsters.
Yeah. And
if a kid gets abused and he comes out of the home saying this such and such person abused me, prove it. They try to prove it. Oh, well, he's a troubled kid. He's going to say whatever he wants to say. And 9 times out of 10, the state will believe the institution instead of the kid.
And I think it's about changing the framing as well, because you hear the framing is around these defiant, these troubled, these disobedient teenagers, and in fact, in my experience, there's other words that describe those children, and they would be typically broken, a low self-esteem, low self-confidence, feeling like they don't belong, feeling unloved and that no one cares, having no positive praise at home, regardless of how hard they may try to behave, having no consistency at home, having negative. They find that negative behaviour becomes their only mechanism they can get to any attention, and then that leads to a feeling of depression.
Yeah. Sorry to laugh at that, but that you just described me before I got sent to Agape. That's exactly how I was with authority, with my parental figures in my life, with myself personally. That describes me. But then all of a sudden you take all that and instead you translate that into a troubled teen. Oh, he's troubled, or he's a rebellious youth. Rebellious youth is sounds way different than what you just described. What you just described, you tell me a kid has all those things. It's like, oh my gosh, like how do we take care of this kid? How do we provide for them? How do we take care of what can we do for them? But if they're a troubled teen, it's almost like the kid's the problem. It's he's out of control. He's a problem. And we need to fix him type of thing. Which either way they need help, but it's a way they go about helping them versus a depressed, all that stuff you listed versus a troubled kid. Just using that terminology, it changes it for all the people out there. All these people are hearing from these survivors of the troubled teen industry. They're still looking at us that's a really good point. They're looking at us still as troubled teens, and not everything you just listed off is, which I guarantee you, majority of the kids had some at least one of those things on that list. Wow.
Yeah.
Exactly, and then you and they're all issues that need help with, the help to deal with the issues that whatever it is has caused that. It can be huge different ranges of circumstances from grief to having just no proper boundaries at home, to having witnessed something horrific like somebody dying violently, or being a witness to violence yourself in the home. All these things can lead to that, and then it just seems grossly irresponsible that you can then ship off a teenager to somewhere and say, "Oh, you go fix them," because there is no quick fix. It requires dedication from the guardians or the parents to fix the issues, not just shipping somebody off. And
right. Well, sometimes, you put a kid on medication if he has some sort of mental issue, ADD, any kind of stuff like that. And what happens is, if they become unmanageable, you decide, hey, I'm going to take him to this home. And what happens is, especially the religious homes, they don't believe in medical care. They just believe in the Bible and prayer. So what they'll do, as soon as the kid goes in there, they're going to take away his medical prescriptions, whatever it is, and say, okay, just pray and read the Bible, and you're going to be fine. And it turns out that's not the case. The kid gets worse. And when they get worse, like in James's instance, they beat him. I mean, it's just, it's terrible.
Absolutely,
it's terrible.
Absolutely, and it's a failure to recognize that a lot of these things are neurological conditions, they're conditions of the brain, and you can't just make a quick fix. In a lot of cases, the way the brain is wired, and you just can't, alter that wiring. And I mean, in this country, just to give you an idea, in this country, children who would have autism or ADHD or ODD or ADD, they typically have something called an EHCP plan, which stands for an Educational Health and Care Plan, which is a legal document that puts statutory requirements on different institutions to provide care for that child, whether it's a school, whether it's the hospitals, or whatever it might be. And it's always centralized on what is in the best interest of the child, not what's in the best interest of the parents or whoever, but what's in the best interest of the child. Right. And that plan follows them. So if they get that plan early on in life, in say primary school, it will follow them to their secondary school, regardless of where that might be, and that statutory requirement will follow them as well, because we recognize that it's important to celebrate people's differences and to look at disability not as a something that writes you off from society, but something that society can understand, and you can become a really functioning, good member of society, regardless of the disability that you may have.
Now, among the normal people like us, we do see that as a medical issue. But when you get into the religious world, which we've been into, me and James, demons infiltrating your mind, we need to get rid of them. That's what it is. They don't see it as a medical condition. They see it as the devil tried to take over your life, and we need to get rid of that. That's the problem.
Well, it's been a while since I've been in the Bible, but I used to be being at the school for 4 years.
Yeah.
In there every single day. And I could be wrong about this, and someone in the comments will probably correct me on this, but I'm trying to think anywhere in the Bible where it talks about mental health or talks about how to deal with these people that are having these issues, or, even in the Bible times when someone was acting up or they were, like you said, they're possessed. Like that was the solution. That was the answer. It was never a mental thing or a tumor in their brain or any of that thing. It was just, it's a demon in them causing them to be crazy.
Right.
And that was a solution. Like you said, pray for them.
Yeah, back in the old days, before they had any type of medical science or any type of understanding, it was demons, it was devils, it was possession, like you said, James. So they just had to pray it away, or they let your blood out, to get rid of this stuff. and that's
Yeah.
and religion hasn't changed. You know what I mean? They don't advance. You know that the book is the book ever been edited? The Bible? No, doesn't need to be.
Right. Right.
So that's how it is. Now I'm not sure how it is in England. I know you Anglican, right? That's the religion
Yeah.
of England, right? And you Queen Elizabeth
So
is still queen,
that's all right. Yes.
and when she dies, that bat-eared, doe-faced, Muslim-loving guy, Prince Charles, is going to become head of the church and the country, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
if uh, there has to be some speculation that it may skip a generation and William may become king.
Really?
Well, I mean, it's only speculation in the media rather than anything concrete. But
Yeah.
it's it's interesting because we recognise religion as people are entitled to follow their own religions, whether
Really?
that's Church of England, whether that's Catholic, whether that's Islam or Judaism or whatever it might be. Absolutely committed to following those religions, but there is a requirement that you can't follow a religious belief which would go against the law. So
Don't you have
still
to pay? Don't you have to pay taxes to the church, or money, or something?
I mean, the public purse, I think, does pay the church
Okay.
something, but I'm not too familiar on.
Well, see, that's the difference. Like I said, England, you have it's a church. The church is basically, you like you said, you got a purse where they pay the church. Here in America, the church is basically tax exempt.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're tax exempt, you don't have to pay taxes to the government. And of course, like when it comes to politicians, a lot of them say, I'm a Christian or whatever. And if anything bad goes on in the religious homes, they really don't want to touch it because they're afraid that if they say anything bad about religious, institutions, they're not going to get the votes. It's all about the votes, and that's a big problem right there.
I mean,
because there's 73 million even conservative people here in America, and they all vote for the religious guy.
every organization, whether it's a school, a youth program, a church program, any program that involves minors has a statutory requirement to safeguard children. And it doesn't
Right.
matter whether it's a private program, whether it's a public program. It's a statutory requirement that's required by law. And as part of that, there are inspections. So you have potentially unannounced inspections in schools, but that doesn't just the state schools. That's what we call public schools, which are actually private schools, which is the opposite term in America, I know.
Right.
But those inspections are published. So you get inspected, it gets published. You can put your grading on your website to say we've been rated outstanding or good or whatever it might be. And if one of the agencies who does the inspections believes there's serious cause for concern, they can shut that place down straight away without any issue, whether it's religious, whether it's state sector. They can take immediate action to protect children, which is what seems so bonkers this side of the Atlantic, where you can have places that are allowed to operate where there are allegations, and it seems difficult for those allegations to be properly investigated, and for any children that are at risk to be protected.
I gotcha.
It's,
Yeah.
and if
That's
I mean,
that's a good point.
and if you look on any school website, and you'll find links to policies. So you might find links to safeguard or child abuse policies, or staff code of conduct policies, or whistleblowing policies.
Right.
Crucial policies that
Shut the door.
that keep everybody safe and keep children safe. Because we have something in the UK called DBS, which stands for it's a service which checks people who are disbarred, and it also checks their records. So it's a disbarring and record checking service. So if you apply for a job, say in a school, whether it's a private school, whether it's a public school, whether it's a state school, or a youth program, or wherever it might be, and you're working with children, or you're working with vulnerable adults who may have a disability, you have to get the DBS check, and that checks to make sure you're not on a list where if you've been, say, sacked for something that's inappropriate, that you'd be placed on that list, and that could be like sacked for hitting a child, and therefore you'd be on that list, and you wouldn't be able to then apply for any job anywhere else. So you couldn't just leave one place and go to another, and that shocks me that in such a forward country as the United States, there isn't an equivalent there. So, because it looks to me like you could, even if you were accused of something at one school, you could leave that school and go to work at another school, and nobody would know.
Right.
And
well, it depends on the crime. I mean, if it's theft or defiance or whatever, no. But if sex offenders, that follows you.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
You're a red dot on a map.
Yes.
Here,
basically, yes. You are the lowest of the low. Yes, they will find you. As far as if let's say for instance, James, hopefully soon, Agape gets shut down. Okay. What's going to happen, I believe, is they're just going to pack up. And they're going to move to another state that doesn't have the regulations. And they're going to go under another name or even the same name. But that's how it is. If they shut down, they're going to go somewhere else until they've basically either get prisoned or they're dead. One of the two. You know what I mean? That's how it goes. They won't stop. They're not going to stop.
I was gonna say it's interesting too over here too. Like I wonder over there. I should say that the number of I'm assuming there's no survivor group in the UK over there. That's like these kids that came out of these programs as adults and now they're dealing with all the abuse and stuff they went through in these programs that are regulated over there. But I'm also wondering if these religious organizations that have these schools for the kids, if they're not able to properly practice their religion because the government's involved with their school. Because that's the fear over here in America, is that these schools are afraid of letting the government in because it's separation of church and state, and that if the government gets in, excuse me, they're going to be telling the school how to run religiously.
I think the closest thing I could think of is back in the 90s where we prohibited corporal punishment in schools back in the early 80s in state schools, but it wasn't until the late 90s that we actually outlawed it completely, whether it was private or state schools. And there were a lot of cases in the late 90s by Christian schools who believed that it was taking a right away from them not being able to beat a child. But the law prevailed and simply said, you can't do this.
Right.
And
I wish that would happen here.
Right.
And interestingly, the corporal punishment actually became outlawed in the early 80s because a mother took a school to the European Court of Human Rights because she specifically said that her child was not to be subjected to corporal punishment, and they they used corporal punishment, regardless that her wish was that didn't happen. And a whole load of court cases happened, which resulted in the government kind of eventually saying, we're banning this.
What is England's idea of corporal punishment, though?
That's a good
Like
question.
whippings, beatings, slap.
So so back in the back, I think generally it was usually a cane. I think
A cane.
a cane. There was, I think I've heard mention of things like maybe a
Wiffle
tours
ball.
in Scotland, I think. But thankfully, all these things had disappeared from the really from the education sector before I became a child going through the school system. So something I never thankfully had to experience.
Okay.
And interestingly, I went to a middle school which opened back in the 70s, and they prided themselves that they had never ever used corporal punishment because the headmaster just absolutely didn't believe in that whatsoever. And he was the first memory I've got of what we call restorative practice today, where we try to positively engage children and help them understand the consequences of their actions on other people and how it's impacted people, so that they learn that actually doing that isn't okay, and this is what happens, and then they rarely go on to repeat that behavior. And that's not about punishing them. It's about helping them understand that if you, for example, smash somebody's garden pot, you throw a stone at somebody's garden pot that they've spent time saving money up to purchase. You bring that person together with the person who's committed the act, and you let them explain how it feels to have their property smashed up, and what they went through in order to save for that. And then usually when you have those conversations, the child actually realizes, that was a really bad thing to do. I shouldn't really have done that. And I kind of wish I hadn't done that now, because they're getting an understanding of the impact that their actions has had, not just a telling off. Because one of the noticeable things from the podcasts that I've noticed is that many of the people who are giving the testimony on the Hammer podcast often say that they realized how to play the program, or they realized how to just do what was required, but actually it didn't actually teach them anything. They didn't learn anything from it, and so therefore it wasn't challenging their perceptions on perhaps any behaviors that they were doing. It was simply they were just playing the system, and that doesn't help anybody. And you look at when people go on to leave, they're back in the real world again without any without any ways of being able to
without
understand.
Without any form of training or education or anything like that. Yeah, they've basically taken 2 steps back, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No.
Oh, it is, and also at the school too, that they would tell us that they tell us our actions got us there. It was our fault, the way that we treated our parents, what we did got us sent to the school. So, it I don't know, explain, we, no matter what, the kid was a problem. Our actions were the problem. The way we behaved was a problem. So that was just embedded into our mind that no matter what, we were the problem with it. So there was a sense of just guilt and just feeling like shit that, that we did this. We're at the school. We're going through all this stuff that is being done to us, the discipline, the physical, the emotional, mental. It's all our fault. Everything's our fault. So we never thought while we're going through it, like, this is messed up. The staff shouldn't be doing this to us. It's because it was brainwashed into us that our actions result in this. So they did teach us that. They did teach that there was a consequences to our actions, and Agape was that consequence. That was right, because of our actions prior. But
And
that was it.
I think the concept of that is extremely misplaced, because a lot of the actions that may be perceived to got you there were not actually your fault. Were not things that you could control. You know, if you've witnessed another adult committing an act of violence in your household, for example, that isn't your fault. And yet, you know, if you've done so many or been exposed to many things that have caused you to perhaps go off the correct path, that's not necessarily your fault. It's about and so we don't. I think I've explained it's not quite as well as I could, but we try not to make people feel guilty. We try to help them understand the impact of their actions, but not to make them just assume the entire guilt for the entire world, because that doesn't help anybody.
This is the consequence of what happens if you do this. You know what I mean? As far as what James was saying, yeah, they say it's your fault, and you know this is the reason why you're going to Agape, and then you get to Agape, and Agape says, you know, you're an idiot, you're no good, you're bound for hell, you're a terrible sinner, you're never going to amount to anything, and it just drills it down even more. And if their self-esteem is right here, by the time they're done with Agape, it's going to be even lower.
Exactly.
You know,
and I mean, I can relate to that, because I'm not sure if I mentioned this to James, but my first school was a church school, and whilst I didn't experience anything in the, the realms of Agape, I did experience the fact that my mother was treated very differently, because she was a single parent, because she got divorced from my biological father, and she was really looked down to on the school, and the way I was treated was different to that of children who'd come from normal families, two parents at home, and there was one occasion my mum was left in floods of tears, telling her that I was hopeless, that I was stupid, I'd never met anything of my life, I'd never achieved anything, and I've taken great delight in doing the polar opposite and achieving great things that nobody thought that I could ever do, but it's kind of like that. The Agape is that, but on steroids almost, so to speak. But yeah, destroying a child like that doesn't help the child, doesn't help anybody. And
right.
I mean, I've got this definition here, which is a government definition of indicators of abuse. And I thought it might be quite interesting to hear what we define as abuse over here. So abuse is a form of maltreatment of a child. Somebody may abuse or neglect a child by inflicting harm or failing to act to prevent harm. Children may be abused in a family or an institutional or community setting by those known to them, or more rarely by others. Abuse can take place wholly online, or technology may be used to facilitate online abuse. Children may be abused by adults or by another child or children. Physical abuse is a form of abuse which may involve hitting, shaking, throwing, poisoning, burning, scalding, drowning, suffocating, or otherwise causing physical harm to a child. Physical harm may also be caused when a parent or a carer fabricates the symptoms or deliberately induces illness in a child. Emotional abuse is the persistent emotional maltreatment of a child, such as to cause severe and adverse effects of the child's emotional development. It may involve conveying to a child that they are worthless or unloved, inadequate, or valued only insofar as they meet the needs of another person. It may include not giving the child opportunities to express their views, deliberately silencing them, or making fun of what they say or how they communicate. It may feature age or developmentally inappropriate expectations being imposed on children. These may include interactions that are beyond a child's development capability, as well as overprotection and limitation of exploration of learning, or preventing a child from participating in a normal social interaction. It may involve seeing or hearing the ill treatment of another. It may involve serious bullying, including cyberbullying, causing children frequently to feel frightened or in danger, or the exploitation or corruption of children. Some level of emotional abuse is involved in all types of maltreatment of a child, although it may occur alone.
That's a mouthful.
Wow. Yeah, but getting into the emotional side like that, I mean, the physical, obviously, but then the emotional abuse definition, like that aspect, like that, I was just picturing what went on at Agape and like some of the stuff, especially like the younger kids there, that, being held at the same standards that a 17 or 18-year-old, were needed to be held at, but emotionally, mentally, physically, everything. They're being held at an age which wasn't their own. They wasn't being taken into consideration when punishments were being handed out or anything.
And then
Yeah.
just there's two further definitions. So that sexual abuse is designed as involves forcing or inciting a child or young person to take part in sexual activities, not necessarily involving a high level of violence. Whether or not the child is aware of what is happening, the activities may involve physical contact, including assault acts. It goes on to describe sexual acts. They may also include non-contact activities, such as involving children in looking at or in the production of inappropriate images. Sexual abuse can take place online. Technology can be used to facilitate this. Sexual abuse is not solely perpetrated by adult males. Women can also commit acts of sexual abuse, as can other children. The sexual abuse of children by other children is a specific safeguarding issue in education. Neglect is the persistent failure to meet a child's basic physical and or psychological needs, likely to result in a serious impairment of a child's health or development. Neglect may occur during pregnancy, for example, as a result of maternal substance abuse. Once a child is born, neglect may involve a parent or carer failing to provide adequate food, clothing, shelter, including exclusion from home or abandonment, protect a child from physical and emotional harm or danger, ensure adequate supervision, involving the use of inadequate caregivers, or ensure access to appropriate medical care or treatment. It may also include neglect or unresponsiveness to a child's basic emotional needs. So that's kind of the 5 ways we categorize abuse in this country.
Yeah. The sexual abuse, that sounds a lot like Jareth, doesn't it?
Yeah,
James?
yeah, and also too the safeguard. I think it says something about safeguards for child on child sexual abuse, which that was the same that what happened with Matt at the school too.
Yeah.
And that's the only one that I'm sure there's more and more stories that have happened there that we just don't know about, but yeah, that's accepted by everyone there. Right?
Yeah.
That's not just like the government saying this and no one really abides by it. Like this is enforced there, and the children, I'm assuming, are listened to when they come forward and they say, "Hey, there's an issue," or something like that.
Every member of staff that works in a school or an educational establishment has to be safeguarding trained, and there has to be somebody who's a specific duty to safeguarding in that school or organisation. And staff are trained that should a child make an allegation, that child must always be listened to. And a couple of things that you must always do is never agree confidentiality with that child, because it can be in their needs to pass on what they tell you to a more appropriate adult or agency to give them the help that they need. But certainly, you would never, ever accuse a child of lying. Absolutely never, ever accuse a child of lying, because it is for an investigation to determine whether it's
right,
correct or not. Not for you who that child has chosen to confide in. It's not for you to make an opinion on that. It's not for you to decide whether they're telling the truth or lying. It's for you to flag up, this child has said that X, Y, Z has happened, and it needs to be investigated. That's the law. That's the law. That's not just a good practice. That's how the law requires you to act. And you have to have this training every year. So every year or 2 years, so that you're always up to date with the latest information.
Well, let me tell you something, Simon. Here in America, your only qualification, you can sum it up in one word: saved. Brother, I've been saved. So what did you do before? Well, I was a bum. I rode the trains. I was a heroin addict. But you know what? I found Jesus. Oh, brother, Come on in, man. We can find a place for you. You can watch
Yep.
these 12-year-old girls.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
It's like, what'd you do? Oh, I was the main person that did, child trafficking before, but I found Jesus while I was doing that. So
Yep.
can I come work at your boarding school?
As
You
long,
found Jesus. Yeah.
yep. As long as if you're in America, as long as you found Jesus, Jesus has washed away all your sins.
Yeah.
You know, you are a different person, and you're all good.
But not to say that people don't change, mind
Yeah.
you, right? There's some people that could change, but then again, even if someone was a multiple, you know, pedophile, like, just because I found Jesus, maybe not put them running your youth ministry at your church,
Yeah.
type of thing. It's like,
Yeah.
baby steps, right? Have them start with the elders and work with them first, and they do good there, or something like that. But yeah, it's Simon is really good about doing it. I don't know, investigative work. I don't know, like that. That's how him and I got to talking. Is he watched all these podcasts, and then he reached out. Like, well, I gotta say this, dude, and not to toot your horn, Simon, but he reached out initially, just saying, after watching our podcast and stuff and seeing mine too, he just reached out, just saying, "Hey, I hear you, and I believe you, and I support you in that. That's it. I'm just reaching out. You don't have to answer me. You don't have to say anything back. Just want to let you know that someone on the other side of the country, I mean, the other side of the world, is hearing your story, believing you, supporting you on it, and that's it, you know." And then we just started talking back and forth, and he started finding all this information about things related to Agape, like doing all this online research, and just these kind of conversations we're having with him right now. And it just one thing led to another. And I'm like, dude, you got to share this information. Like, this is
Yeah.
good stuff. So it's
And
interesting how he finds all this stuff. It's
and
really,
Simon, we in America thank you for that.
yeah,
I mean, just go back to
Really,
what James said.
sincerely,
It was
sincerely.
it was important for me to reach out to James and just say that, to say I believe you, because I think that too many times a lot of these young people don't feel that people actually believe what they're saying, and and that can do as much harm as anything else. To just be ignored, to be dismissed, to be no, that never happened.
Right.
And that's a principle that the main principle of safeguarding is to make people feel they're being listened to, that they're being believed, because there's nothing more important than making people feel that if, because all the people who have given testimony on this podcast and other podcasts are incredibly brave individuals, because it takes a huge amount of personal courage to be able to talk about a lot of the things that they talk about, to want to relive a lot of those things that happened to them, whether it was 20 years ago or a couple of years ago. And I kind of feel that that their story deserves respect and deserves to be listened to, which is why I try and listen to all the podcasts, because I feel that they've gone to the trouble to tell the world their story. Then people should listen.
Right.
And I mean, I'm interested. Do the stats from your podcast show any other international listeners? Does it break it down like that?
Yes, it does. Most of it is in the United States and Australia. There are a few from England, some from some from Russia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Not so much in the Middle East or any of those countries, or Africa, but it's mostly the European countries and Australia and America.
So the guys on this website can truly be aware they have a global audience. There are people
yes.
listening to them around the world.
I think there are a few. There are a few from India as well. So,
Wow.
but going back to what James was saying, when James gave when I gave an interview with James on the podcast, I believed him, because I came from the independent fundamental Baptist religion, and where I was at, I didn't go to the homes, but I went to the school that was there. The Rebecca, I don't know if you're familiar with the Rebecca Home for Girls, but
No, I'm sure I
um,
heard that one.
no, well, they're closed down now, thank goodness. But you could just see the look of sadness and defeat on their face. And I saw some of the times when the Rebecca girls would go into the room where the principal was, and he would just whip them with a paddle. I mean, and they'd come out just sobbing and oh, So when James, when he said he got, his when they hit you in the head with who was it, James? They got hit you in the head.
Oh, yeah, it was one of the staff. When
Yeah,
I said worse, and he literally just threw me on my back and started punching me and
yeah.
grabbing my shirt and headbutting me in the face.
You
Like
know,
it's like,
I have no reason not to
yeah,
believe him. Because we had a guy on named Todd. I'm sure you saw the podcast. He was from 1990, and he gave
yeah,
the same, well, not almost the same, but similar experience at Agape. And these guys, James and Todd have never met each other, and they're given the same experience.
Well, I mean,
you know,
I was going to make that point as well. That so many of the people who are giving their testimony about what's happened to them say the same things generations apart. So it's not like it's
right. It's not like they
an
all got
invention
together.
that
They
happened
didn't all
then.
get, they didn't all get together and say, okay, what are we going to say? Let's say this. No, you know,
right,
But why would they as well? Why?
right.
yeah,
Why would they?
Doing all this, like doing these podcasts and like even the time off the podcast where I have a lot of guys reaching out to me and talking to me, venting to me, sharing their stories. Some guys don't want to come on the podcast, but they just need someone to hear them. Doing this, and there's no financial compensation coming from this. The stuff that we're doing, like this is taking up not complaining, but it takes up a ton of my time doing this stuff and and time for my relationship with my girlfriend and stuff like that. But and not getting anything from it, it's like, so it's like these people, like, if they assume we all got together and we're trying to do this, it's like, why? Like, why would we go through all this, spend all this time and effort, everything for what? Like, other than
attention.
I don't want, yeah, attention. Like when I first came on your podcast, like I was going to back out too, because I was nervous about doing it, telling my story. I was worried about what everyone was going to think about my story, and all that stuff. But then after doing it, like, it was so therapeutic just talking to someone. Even if you posted it and it got 1 view, no views, whatever, just talking to you, Jason, about it and sharing my story and having you listen, it was like a therapy session. And I was like, man, if I feel this good after doing this, we need to have probably more guys doing this.
Right.
And here we are. Now,
All you needed was a couch.
yeah.
But I mean, James and I talk quite a lot now, and I know that even now, decades on from when he was at this place still penetrates his subconsciousness and still
Yeah.
still brings him terrible trauma occasionally at night. And it's outrageous that somebody can be put through an experience that still has such an impact on them so many years later. And I think that is a fundamental point to get across, that because you see all the reviews, some of the reviews that say that my child is saved now or his father improved, but it's at what price? At what price?
Right.
How do you know when they start talking about the stuff that's happened, or if they will start talking about the stuff that's happened? How do you know how much it's going to have so badly affected them?
Right.
And how many psychotherapists, psychologists, and home they're going to have to go and see to try and come to terms with the stuff that's happened to them.
Right.
I don't. I mentioned to James in a conversation, would 18-year-old James have come out and started telling the world what happened to him?
No, I would have, when I got out of Agape, I was singing his praises of what it did for me and talking everything I was taught to tell my family while I was there. You can't tell your family any of the negative stuff that's happening at Agape. They teach you to paint this perfect picture of how things are going on there, or what's happening there, and how things are, and how you're doing, and how much you've changed. When I got out of the school, I was the same way. I was saying the same story, So these parents that are posting, "Oh, Agape saved my child. He came out this way." Let's talk to those same parents 10 years later, 20 years later, when their son's on drugs, committed suicide, on his third marriage because he, can't accept like love from anybody. Like, let's talk to them. Those aren't the parents that are leaving reviews. It's the ones right when their kids get out and the kids are coming out. "Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. I want to go to church. Anything you say, I'll do." And they're like, "Man, you changed my kid. He was on drugs. He was rebellious and cussing me out. And now he's saying, 'Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am.'" Man, Agape worked. But like I said, fast forward 10, 20 years, look at these kids. And these are the guys that are coming out. Thankfully, we're getting some kids that are just leaving now, and we're giving them a platform to share their story right away. But yeah, it's.
And the thing is, it's not just, as far as the kids, being mentally screwed up afterwards. Like you said, James, down the line, when the parents, not all of them, but most of them, when they find out what Agape has done, or any troubled teen institution, there's that element of guilt as well. Man, I should not have sent my kid there. Why did I send my kid there?
Yeah.
And so it destroys families, because there's some, as you know, James, there's some of the guys that have come on this podcast don't have good relationships with their parents, because their parents are still in that mindset, in that religious mindset, like they did good, and there's some like Griffin, his mom is just pissed off. It's like, so. And coming from a parent's point of view, it's guilt. It's guilt, And like I said, the only thing they can say, is, "I'm sorry." What else can you do?
Right. Yeah.
And I think an interesting way of looking at it is that the one thing that places like Agape do is take away all that control. So one of the things you can do is wrest that control back. And one of perhaps the biggest ways to do that, if you can, is to forgive perhaps your parents, perhaps because they were as manipulated as anyone else, and but you're forgiving them, you're taking that power back from Agape, you're stopping them destroying that relationship, if you can, and you're saying, "Okay, perhaps things won't ever be as well as they used to be, but I can forgive you." And it's interesting when you hear, and if you've ever read any of the articles from concentration camp survivors from Nazi Germany, and some of those survivors tell their stories that they chose to forgive people who got them sent there, or the guards in some cases, because it was their choice to give that forgiveness. It was their power to give that forgiveness, and they were taking that power back from everybody who'd taken that power away from them. Just a thought.
And that's a pretty powerful statement, because the concentration camps, man, let me tell you, I've seen some documentaries on that, and that was. But the thing is, with parents, especially in the United States, Simon, religious institutions, in a lot of people's eyes, they could do no wrong. They're religious. God's with them. God is good. God is righteous. God is all loving. How could these people in this institution do this? You know what I mean? But then they find out later on, like James said, decades later, that this happened. It's like, that's why a lot of people turn from religion because of it.
Absolutely. And we're not perfect in this country, and we've had a rude awakening over many years. We've had so many scandals that have come to light, so many different places that have had that's been discovered that abuse has been going on, and for those sort of reasons that people couldn't believe that the Benedictine monks would ever do anything like that, because they were good Catholics and what have you. And especially when you're in a society where, I mean, religion isn't as powerful in this country as it used to be. But if you go back a few generations, kind of the towns revolved around the churches, and whether that was Catholic churches or CV churches, but Catholic, the places revolved around the churches, and so often the priesthood was the word of God, if you like, and they kind of would be believed, and you see so many terrible things that have happened because people chose not to believe children when they were speaking out. I mean,
Sure.
One of the worst things that we've had in modern history is the Jimmy Savile scandal. I don't know if you're aware of that over that side of the Atlantic.
No.
Jimmy Savile was a very evil individual who he was a presenter on television. He did a lot of charity work, but behind that mask, he was abusing children, whether that was on the TV shows, whether that was in the hospitals that he was visiting. And there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of victims. And it all came to light after he died. But the one thing that was quite that stood out was that they tried to say things at the time. I remember a child, he visited the school, and a child said to the teacher, Jimmy did something to me that wasn't right. And that child was told to shut up and told that he's an amazing man, he raises lots of money, he would never do anything like that to you. And they didn't speak about that again for quite a long time, really until he died. But then you start to see the wider picture, the fact that he used his fame, his charity work in order to hide all the terrible things that he was doing. And so that's why it's so important to listen to children, to listen to what they're saying, to listen to other children who might say, well, that person gives me the creeps, because often they're a very good judge of character. Don't just ignore those comments. Don't just kind of pass them off. Investigate. Make sure that there's nothing inappropriate going on. And people have nothing to fear from investigation. If they've done nothing wrong, there's nothing that will be found. And I mean, it's like I don't, from this side of the Atlantic, I don't understand why every school in the entire United States doesn't have an annual inspection, because there's nothing to fear from that. In fact, what that inspection is doing is just confirming that you're a really good place of education. And so everybody should want that.
It's a separation of church and state. That's why. The state doesn't run these schools. The church does. And the states basically let them do whatever they want to do. That's why. And that's a problem.
But even in this country where you've got religious schools, which we have religious schools, they still get annual inspections. And the policy of safeguarding is paramount over everything, because it's recognised just how important it is. We had another terrible case back in 2003 called the Victoria Climbier case, and basically she was a little girl that ended up being murdered. But lots of partner agencies, hospitals, doctors, various other people, they weren't communicating together to talk about their concerns about the child. So the bigger picture wasn't being seen. So when a child is considered at risk now, all those agencies come together to talk about whether or not there's signs at that hospital or that school or that whatever it may be, so that the child is put first before anything else, to make sure that they're safe.
Right.
And one thing I said to James was that I think my personal view is that child protection needs a complete overhaul in the United States, and it needs to put the child at the centre and stop putting the adults at the centre. The children have to be at the centre. because they are the most vulnerable who can't speak for themselves.
The only problem with that, Simon, is the fact that these young kids are not eligible voters. That's a big problem because
Yeah.
you know what I mean, James? Votes. These politicians care nothing more than just votes. Okay, and they know that if they get on the side of the religious, that they're going to get their votes. And there's a lot of religious people in this country. And if you go against a religious institution, you're bound to lose an election. That's what it's all about now. It's all about votes.
And they also, it's here in the states, like when you're going against a religious institution, those people take it as though you're going against their God. You're accusing their God. Like these religious institutions, like you said, there's God in these places, right? So if I'm attacking this religious school, ABC, that is a Christian boarding school, I'm attacking their God, their religion, their everything, and saying that, there's, abuse happening there.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you're accusing their God of, of this thing, and they take it as this personal attack or whatnot. But it's interesting because even in the Christian religion, right, we're sinful, right? We have, us men we're sinful. So it's like, we're not going after your God, saying your God is the issue or your religion is the issue. It's the people in your religion, like these people, these sinners, which we all agree we are, that are the ones that are the issue that we're trying to call out. But they take it as a personal attack on their religion and on their God. And it's like they just puff up their feathers and they get their whole congregation supporting them on it because they're like, look, the government's coming in here. They're trying to change us. It's like, no, we're coming after you, pastor, because we got 15 sexual allegations from children against you, not your God, not your religion. It's you, know, but they take it as a personal thing, get everyone behind them. And then, the government's afraid to get involved, and really go after them because now all the other Christian organizations are all going to get behind and say the government's coming after us. They're trying to do this to us. It's like, no, we're trying to come after that one person, that one boarding school that's doing things wrong. And it's the people there, not your religion.
And these congregants are so brainwashed.
Yeah.
My pastor couldn't do anything like that. He's a good man. He's ordained. He's and like you said, James, all it takes is a stroke of the keyboard. Someone feels offended, they type on Facebook or whatever, this such and such politician is doing this. All of a sudden, that politician is getting death threats. He's getting, you know what I mean? That's what it takes. It's so simple to do nowadays.
Have you heard of somebody called Aaron Bacon?
I know it because you showed it to me.
No, I don't know about him.
Because I found him when I was doing a bit more research. He was a 16-year-old boy who was at a wilderness program in not in Missouri, in another state. And again, his parents had him kidnapped from his bed in the middle of the night, and he got taught the wilderness program, and so he had to go on this insane hike as kind of the first thing that he did there. And there's actually a movie being made about it. It's on YouTube, actually. But he suffered terrible abuse at the hands of the staff there. And at one point, he was saying he was in such pain and such discomfort. They sent out a private ambulance which belonged to this school, and their answer to medical treatment was to give him a cheese slice and tell him to get on with it. He then was forced to continue marching, and he started to lose control of his bodily functions. He was wetting himself and what have you, and again he was more just further abused. And there was one scene where a guy who ran this school came out and drove out to the desert and told him off for making things up, and then took his sleeping bag away. And so he was left to sleep under the stars. And anyway, this goes on, and the abuse gets worse and worse, having to walk with this horrendous backpack. And this guy comes back out again in this this like Land Rover, and this guy's been really struggling, and he's complaining, and they pick him up, they put him down at the wheels of this Land Rover, and they're talking with each other, and then they say, "Bacon, get up," and he doesn't respond because he died at that moment that they should be down there because his body couldn't take any more. And when his parents went to identify the body, they described it seeing a concentration camp victim, because even though he'd only been there a few weeks, the amount of weight that he'd lost was horrendous. And there were no murder charges placed against the school. Somebody went to prison for child abuse for a year, but that was, I think, was the extent of what happened. And I found this story, and I was just completely bewildered how that level of treatment that resulted in a child's death could not be taken even more seriously, and how a child that died in this industry in the 90s, how that hadn't had a bigger effect to regulate the industry from that point. And
it's all about the religious stranglehold that's on America right now. That's what it is.
Yeah.
These guys can do no wrong. I mean, I'm sure if the kid died, it was his fault. I mean, seriously. I mean, that's how it is. These guys are in such positions of power in the religious world that, I mean, it could be murder, and they might get a year, maybe, depending. And like I said, politicians, you could try and go against the religious, but all they're going to do is they're going to lose their seat, and that's what they're worried about. So that's the stranglehold that religion has on America right now, and it's sad.
It is, and I think one of the standout moments in all the podcasts that I've listened to is actually on the John DeVito show, because he does a few podcasts on, and I can't remember the name, but they had a chap on there who he was giving his testimony, and he was saying that he went to Agape when he was 14, but he was a really good footballer. Athletics was his life. He'd got his vision planned out. He wanted to go to college to do a scholarship, and he got his entire life mapped out. And he got sent to this place for not, I think maybe being slightly disrespectful. I can't quite remember, but he got sent to this place, and he said when he got there, he said, "Well, it can't be that. It can't be this bad. I mean, I am in the United States of America after all." And what he mentioned was that he was restrained in such a powerful way, but even now he hasn't regained full control of his arm many years later.
I think you're talking about Jordan.
Is that Jordan? Okay.
Yes.
And the thing that got me the most was how he talked about seeing his dreams just being destroyed in front of his eyes, and everything that he planned going into smithereens. And it's like, how can anybody justify destroying a child like that? A child that's got his future planned out, who knows exactly what he wants to do. I mean, it just it really makes me feel quite sick to the stomach when you think that this can still go on in 2020, 2021. And we're most of the cases when we hear about abuse, and it's not exclusive, but when we hear about abuse, it's historical. That's not to say it can't happen today, and it does happen today, but the worst things tend to be historical. But to think that it's actually could potentially be going on right now is just quite shocking, and not just in Missouri, but in many other states around the country as well. And I can't think of any bigger justification for regulation than protecting children. I mean, it's
a good point.
I mean, the phrase I think I used to James was "bonkers beyond belief."
Bonkers beyond relief. Yeah. But their thing is, you spoil the rod, spare the child.
Oh no.
Or spare the rod, spoil the child. Sorry.
Yeah.
Spare the rod, spoil the child. In other words, if you don't give that child discipline, he's going to turn out to be a monster. So you have to beat them, you have to demean them in order to get them to be good people.
And it's biblically okay to do that because the Bible says it.
The Bible, yes, the inerrant word of God. The King James version.
Yeah.
1611. Yes.
Quite bizarrely, I'd never heard the King James Bible until it was used in Parliament for some MPs, RMPs to swear on.
Really?
That was a few years ago. It was not recent, but a few years ago. But I mean, I wasn't brought up going to church every day, so I'm not a massive. I can't tell you the Bible page from page, but I can tell you, some of the things that are in it from my experience right back at first school. But religion, everybody, you see, there's this concept of freedom of religion in America, and I absolutely support that people should have the freedom to be part of religion they choose. But nobody should have the right to force anybody else to be part of that religion, because it seems to be counterproductive. Because you're saying, I want the freedom to believe in this religion, but I'm not willing to give everybody else the freedom to choose whether they believe in that religion or not.
Yeah. But I want freedom of religion for my religion because it's the right religion, and everyone else should believe my religion. It's like, but it's like they want the freedom of religion because that concept, it benefits them. Be able to be here in America, freedom of religion. I believe this way, like it benefits them. But then, but then all of a sudden you get a contradictory religion that says, the Bible's not the word of God. That's not. Whoa, like that's not right. You can't be saying that, and you got to believe my way. It's very much like that.
Well, see, it all goes down on the parents as well, because, like I said before, the kids have limited rights. Okay. So let's say the parents are Southern Baptists and the child's being disobedient. Okay, we'll send him to a Southern Baptist home. Doesn't matter if the kid doesn't want it or not. You're going to get it anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whether you like it or not, you're going to accept Jesus. And that's a problem because, like I said, freedom of religion, yes, they should be able to choose whether they believe in God or not, but after they're 18, then they can choose.
Right. Yeah. And if you choose wrong, you might be shunned from your family.
That's right. That's right. Oh, well, it depends. I mean, there are some progressive, liberal type of Christians out there who will let the child, if they want to accept God or not, that's fine with them. But then you got those hardcore, snake handling Southern Baptists, you know what I mean? That will accept nothing more than you accept Jesus, or we're going to disown you.
Right. Well, my family's Christian. Like I was raised Christian, right? They're obviously the ones that sent me to the boarding school as well. But they are, I guess, a progressive. I don't know what you'd call them, but I think they know my religious standpoints in life. I'm assuming they do. And they still accept me and love me. They don't treat me any different. They don't, say you're going to hell every time they see me or something like that, So there are I'm not saying all religious people in America are the same, but
well, I'm not saying all of them.
There's a good chunk that are, snake handlers. Like you're saying, there's a good chunk of those, but then there's also there's becoming more and more of these progressive thinkers that,
like I said, my father was an avid Lester Roloff follower, and I still talk to him to this day, even though we don't see eye to eye on religion.
Right.
He loves me. I'm his son. He's my father. We still have a great relationship, regardless. Right. But there are some, like you said, James, or what we saw on the podcast, where some of those kids don't have a good relationship with
Right.
parents because the parents are extremely religious and they just have to accept that this home did good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They can't accept anything less than that. No matter
Yeah.
no matter what the child says, they beat me, they sexually molested me. Yeah. Wrong. You know, those people couldn't have done that. You're just being defiant and disobedient.
Or even if it did happen, I mean, you still came out a better person, right? Even if you were sexually abused and beat,
Yeah.
you still came out a good person, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so me sending you to Agape was still a good thing because you came out better, even though they did all those things.
They try to
right?
justify it to themselves. It has to be right. It has to be. I can't
Right.
accept anything less.
Right, exactly.
You guys know what the biggest killer, apart from COVID, is in the United States?
Drug
sorry.
overdose? I don't know.
Especially in males and young males, suicide.
Really?
With mental health issues. The biggest killer in the United States.
I thought it was cancer. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's further down the list. And
Wow.
this is, but again, it's fairly similar in this country. It's one of the biggest killers of young men is mental health and not being able to get the help that they need and the support that they need to talk through the mental health crises they may be experiencing, or maybe not being believed, or whatever it might be. So mental health is so incredibly important, and a lot more important than perhaps some, when you hold this old adage of, just man up or what have you. That's a terrible thing because
Yeah.
people have feelings. People are processing different things, and they need compassion and understanding about how to deal with the things that they're processing and the experiences that they've gone through. And so, as a society, we should, and I talk about this as a global society, not just the UK or the America, but as a whole society, we should be more compassionate and kind to each other. Because if we can't be compassionate and kind to each other, then who are the children going to learn from? And it'll just go around in a spiral, and the same will continue and continue. And that has to be broken, and there has to be more compassion and more understanding in the world, and less intolerance and less violence. And because,
well, if there's anybody that's less intolerant, it's religious. I mean, they preach love and unity, but they hate other religions. This other religion has got it bad. They're of the devil. They're, and that's how these kids are being taught. It's not, They're not being taught love and unity. They're being taught hatred.
Right, and separation and judgment.
Yeah, don't listen to this person over here because this person doesn't have the right message. This one's not, they're not with God. This person over here, neither. We have the right message. You listen to us.
Yeah.
And these kids are getting brainwashed. Some are not. Some have, stronger minds than others. But,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or these, it's great whenever I run into these, we call them progressive thinkers, but the ones that are, they are Christian, they are saved, they do believe in Jesus, they do go to church, but you tell them, hey, I worship Satan. They're like, okay, I still love you. I don't judge you. I still love you. Great. And there's no, there's nothing like, there's no, like they're treating you the way that their religion teaches them they should be treating you, and it's like, it's taken all this time for all this stuff to happen in generation over generation to get to where we're at, where there's finally people coming out and genuinely like not judging people and accepting them for who they are and what they believe and how they are. And it is a beautiful thing, but but those people that are like that are hated on by these. I want to keep calling them the snake charmers. I like that term.
It's a double-edged sword is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the thing is, but especially with the independent fundamental Baptists, if you're a homosexual, oh man, you're going to get it extra. You're going to get it extra bad.
Yeah.
You're going to get it 2 times worse. Yes.
That generation though, I feel like that aspect of Christianity or that denomination, whatever you want to call it, like I feel like that's, and this is just speculation, is dying out. It's becoming less and less attractive.
Yes.
So and people are seeing the light more and the realistic of what a Christian should be, and realizing that's not it. And I think it's shrinking more and more. But
Well, you have to realize, like I said, Agape is a Baptist institution. You have to realize with the Baptists, there are many, many chapters. You got independent fundamental, you got regular Baptists, you have historic Baptists, you have all these different chapters of Baptists that do not believe the same thing.
yeah,
Like I said before, James, if you want to know what's wrong with the First Baptist Church, you go to the Second Baptist Church, and they're going to tell you exactly what's wrong with the First Baptist Church. They don't get along, but yet they preach this. They both worship the same God.
yeah,
It's complete confusion, is what it is.
right. But and then it comes once again back down to what we're talking about with the schools, and when there's issues there, and we're not attacking the religion. You're saying there's this there's the Bible, there's God, there's all this stuff that it is what it is, but then there's man's interpretation of it, and then that's why you have the First and Second, Third, Fourth Baptist Church, and it comes into man's interpretation of all these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like you did say, though, as far as homosexuality, there are a lot of churches that are starting to accept it now, because I'm sure they're realizing that it's not demons. It's not devils being, inside this person's head. It's actually I don't know what the right word would say. Right.
It's how they're born.
Yes.
The
I didn't want to say condition. That would have been a bad way to say it, but I mean, it's just they're I believe personally they're born that way, personally, but
absolutely.
But there are some as you get down further into the South, Missouri, Alabama, Texas, they will not accept that. They will. No. They are straight Bible thumping, fire and brimstone. You're going to hell if you don't accept us type of religion. Yeah. And the generations. You say it's starting to die out. Not in the South. Even the younger generations, because they're being taught by the older generations.
Yeah. And I can't think of anything more traumatic than knowing that you were born gay, and that being gay is absolutely normal, and that nobody should ever feel shame or embarrassment for their sexual orientation.
Right.
I can't think of anything worse than being imprisoned in a place where they're constantly made to feel that they're broken for something that they cannot change, and that is part of who they are. That every day they have to confront this reality that everybody around them is saying that they're a terrible human being, but they're absolutely perfectly normal, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with being gay, with being bisexual, or whatever your orientation may be. There's just nothing wrong with that, and society is waking up. Especially, over here, I can speak from over here, in that if you go back to the 90s, the tabloid media over here used to have a field day trying to expose celebrities who they thought were gay and would try and out them. And that doesn't happen anymore, because we passed something called the Equality Act, which defines characteristics, whether it's race, religion, whether it's sexual orientation, as a protected characteristic. So you cannot discriminate against somebody based on that characteristic. So, and somebody, somebody who identifies as gay, for example, will not experience, certainly not in the circles I mix anyway, will not experience any condemnation, and will be supported. There's so much support in this country for gay people. We have big pride events which are attended by both gay and straight people. Typically, the police force will march in the gay pride processions. It's trying to bring the community together to say we are all one. We embrace each other, which is really nice and really positive, because there are generations gone past in this country where discrimination based on sexual orientation has been a very, very real thing, and people's lives have been made to feel an utter hell as a result of it. The name of it's gone out of my head now. We had a code breaker, worked in Bletchley Park. I can't remember his name now. Oh, it's gone on top of my head. I'll tell you who it was. Hang on a minute. Alan Turing, who he was part of the team at Bletchley Park, which cracked the Enigma code. That was the code that the Germans were using in order to send messages to coordinate their. And he almost with his team, but he cracked the code, so we were able to see those communications. And after the war ended, he was convicted of being homosexual, and he was chemically castrated, and terrible things were done to him. Yet he saved the world almost single-handedly from Nazi Germany, and yet he was persecuted just based on his sexual orientation. Now, that couldn't happen today, because at that time in the 50s, when this kind of happened, the late 40s, the 50s, it was a criminal offence in this country to be homosexual. People were so misguided. But thankfully, that is something in the past, and we embrace people today, and we tolerate people today, and we celebrate people's differences, because the fact that people are different is their own individual strengths, and that's what we should do as a society. We should recognise everybody's individual strengths, and accept that people can be different, and accept that people are not all identical, and accept that people have all sorts of different interesting things, things about them, and support them in any way that we can, and whether that's somebody's sexual orientation, and make sure that people don't treat them badly as a result of that, or whether it's when I first started in my working life, I was a computer technician, and I worked with learners who had physical difficulties, and we had a mature student, and she was in a wheelchair, and she was, apart from her head, she was pretty much paralyzed, and so her speech was very difficult, but I always made sure that I gave her the time and the patience so she could say exactly what she wanted to say. I didn't ever finish her conversations for her. I let her say everything. And she would often say to her care workers how wonderful she felt I was, because few people actually did that. Few people appreciated that she was a human being, and not just, a lot of people would just speak to the care workers and not engage. And so by treating everybody humanely, treating everybody with compassion and dignity, we are a much better place.
Right. This world would be better off without religion. And like you were saying about the pride parades, everybody's involved, everybody's having a great time. Here in America, they're going to say, in English terms, bollocks, because hope I said that right. You could be sitting there enjoying the parade as they're going by, and all of a sudden you hear this faint screaming. You turn around, and there's that religious guy on his soapbox. You all are going to hell, with his big old megaphone, and there's nothing you can do to stop it, because it's freedom of speech.
Right. Yeah, they'll do that. There'll be a group of people standing there. They're religious with their
signs,
their cardinal signs, and like God hates gays, and they're holding up their signs and stuff. While all these peaceful, amazing people are doing their parade or doing their gathering, and then these other people have the right to gather as well, and they think they're doing the Lord's work by shaming these gay people for being gay and letting them know that they're going to hell. It's like, I don't know what they're thinking. Do they think that all of a sudden that all these thousands of gay people are going to all of a sudden see their sign about going to hell and be like, oh, good to know. Thanks for letting us know. How do we get saved, and how do we start like liking the opposite gender? You know, like
The thing is, James, I don't think I have ever met anybody who has ever been saved by a street preacher.
right,
You
right.
know, but they always go back to that same book in the Bible, Leviticus. You know, man shall not lay with another man; it's an abomination. But yet they never go any further than that. You know, because it says you can't mix fabrics, you can't all this other stuff. Oh, well, that's just that's the Old Testament. But yet they always cling to that one verse: "A man shall not lay with another man."
Yeah.
And being that the Bible can't be edited,
Right.
you
Right.
know,
And I remember a big verse that they used to use at Agape a lot, for why the women dress the way they did and the men do the way they do. But mainly for women, it's like the woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man.
right?
You know, so that's why women can't wear pants. They can't do this. They can't anything that pretend. You know, that's why they can't have short hair. They have to have long hair. Anything that pertaineth to a man, a woman can't wear. It's like it's interesting that, yeah, you're right. Out of like the thousands and probably thousands of verses in the Bible, they pick and choose these hand-picked ones that support their religion and the way of being, and they drive those home. But then the rest of it, it's like, don't need
Yeah.
that.
And if you, I mean, it all depends on the interpretation as well. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because you could say,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, that's not really." Yes, that's what it means, but you're just interpreting it wrong. This is what it
Right.
means. You know?
Right.
You can't win. You can't win with them because they
No.
always have these set answers already in their quiver,
Yes.
basically ready to just throw at you.
Yes.
So
It's so funny. Yeah.
yeah.
I think.
Go ahead.
I think that even though there is, as you say, this element, and especially in America, a large element of religious extremism, I think as a whole, society is shifting. I mean, a few years ago, you'd probably never have thought that you'd see equal marriage across every state in the United States, and so that's now changed, and people can marry who they love, and I think that shows progression, and that shows that as a society you are capable of moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My favorite one from the Southern Baptists is God made Adam and Eve, didn't make Adam and Steve.
Yeah.
You've heard that one, I'm sure.
I've heard that many a times. Yeah.
Yeah.
But technically, God did make Adam and Steve too.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
originally. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, yes, it is being accepted, gay marriage, and anybody, as far as I'm concerned, if you want to marry a man, you go right ahead. You know what I mean? That's your decision. That's what you're going to have to live with. That's fine. I don't have no problem with that.
Yeah.
But
There's a really funny clip, which comes from when Ireland, because we brought in equal marriage before Ireland. Ireland actually had a referendum on it. We just did it through an act of parliament. And there was a clip that's on YouTube where it's from a program where they're asking people's opinions, and this gentleman speaks who is quite a bigoted. I think he's Irish, probably quite religious. He's quite bigoted in his views, and he makes a colossal mistake when he says, "We don't want to see no marriage between no men and women." And obviously, he was talking about 2 men and 2 women, but
Right.
he condemned heterosexual marriage in one go on national television in Ireland. So it was a very funny moment.
oh my goodness, should have had him on Monty Python.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love Monty Python.
But just like I said, I accept the homosexuals. That's fine. Lesbians, whatever gender you are. Hey, you got my vote. You know what I mean? But religion will never accept it. And but they are, they are. When you think about it, they are kind of a small minority but they have a huge voice. You know, there are some people that say that, you know, they don't identify as religious, but deep down inside they will vote, you know, for the religious right. You know what I mean? They're not going to vote for the liberals or the left. They're going to vote for the religious right, even though they don't claim to be Christian. And that's the silent majority, I guess, as you would call it. So that's why the religious have so much power in this country. You know, so.
It'd be interesting, though, I think, to see over the next few years, now that the Senate, the House of Republicans, and the presidency is all Democratic, if there is progressive change on a lot more of these things, and because my understanding, I may be wrong, but a lot of the religious hold tends to be around Republican politicians rather than Democratic politicians. But I may be wrong there. But
no, you're correct.
Right,
you're correct.
So it'd be interesting to see if there is further progressive action on a lot of these issues, and whether that influence is no longer as strong as a result of the sort of the shifts in power.
Well, you know, religious institutions in this country are like Jesus. They die, and then they rise up again. Or they go into hiding. They go into hiding. You might not hear from them for a while, and then as soon as we get a Republican president, here they come. You know, they're always going to be around, because you know the religious people have children. They teach them the religion. Some of them take to it, some don't, and the cycle continues, and it continues, and it continues.
I think what's been notable over here, and it may happen in America over time, is that the attendance of young people at church is just vastly dwindling in most denominations. And if you go back 60 years ago, those churches would be ram-packed, you know, to the rafters with all the local households and what have you. And a lot more people no longer, for whatever reason, no longer willing to perhaps identify as those religions, or no longer feel as strong a need to go to church and to and practice that religion. And so it's interesting that shift obviously is happening as younger people get older, and those younger people who haven't kind of grown up with the same religious indoctrination shift the balance of society.
Yeah,
well, I think England used to be Catholic until Henry VIII.
Correct, that's right, and he burnt down all the churches because the Catholic Church wouldn't let him divorce his wife. So he said, "I'm not having any of you. You can all go." And so he sent his soldiers to burn down every Catholic institution that they could find across the land.
Oh, wow!
And that's why we have Church of England today, because he said, well, a bit kind of like Donald Trump here, really. He kind of said, well, if you can't give me what I want, I shall be the church instead. And Church of England was born.
And see, like you said, churches have been fighting against each other for centuries.
Absolutely.
Yes, and it's not going to stop.
Yeah.
You know, you have the Christians who are against the Catholics, and vice versa. And then, of course, you have the Christians against the Muslims. So you know, it's never gonna change. It's never gonna stop. The only thing I'm worried about, like he says, we got to get these homes shut down or regulated somehow, where these staff and owners are held responsible for any actions that could result in any type of injury or death of one of these kids.
Yeah.
So. Absolutely. And I think maybe the first step is to look at Washington State have done and try and either get it done at a federal level or roll it out to all the other states to stop a lot of what's going on. And if a child is having such extreme problems that they need that help, it should be a court that's trained in child protection and child care and understanding of these issues to make the decision that's what the best decision is for that child, not for a stressed out parent who doesn't know where to turn to make that decision. There should be partner agencies in every state that are there to help parents deal with these issues, to help to protect the rights of children, because a lot of these places only exist because, as you say, children don't have rights. But if they have the rights, then they couldn't exist in the same way. And I think it's important to recognise that that change that needs to be made. Because something else that I said to James, which I couldn't quite believe when I looked at it, but the United Nations has a treaty on rights of a child, and every country in the world, is signed up to it, apart from two. That's Somalia and the United States of America.
Not surprised.
I was like, how can the country that epitomizes themselves as the example for the free world not be a signatory to something like that? I can't quite understand, because surely every society wants to protect its children, and that's a really fundamental way of doing that, to say that we recognize that a child should have these rights.
Well, I think it all falls back on the parents. I mean, I'm sure the government will say, well, the parents are going to take care of it. No big deal. And unless, like I said, unless a child gets injured, I mean, if you're in a household and, everything's going fine, you grow up, get to the age of 18, leave home, everything's great. But the minute you start getting abused in that home, that's the time when the government comes in and says, okay, wait a minute, let's do something about this. So
absolutely,
it has to be something. It has to be a special, occurrence for it to happen. Other than that, the government will not get involved.
And it's a training of all adults, whether they are medical professionals, educational professionals, whatever they may be, to signpost and understand when they see certain signs. Because a child who's being abused isn't going to go around with a flag saying, I'm being abused. The small signs that professionals are trained to look for, that changes in behaviour, random mood swings, all these sorts of things, which does describe a typical teenager, but also describes children that go through a lot of issues that need help. And so you fundamentally need that change. You need people who are working with...
Simon, you're breaking up.
Those things.
We're all breaking up. Uh-oh.
Take action.
All right. Yeah, that's fine.
But we have systems here in America that.
Oh, there we go. You're back. There you go.
Okay, yeah. We were here, but yeah. We didn't see you.
Well, you guys just froze.
Oh, really?
So that's fine.
You disappeared.
Oh, did I? Oh no!
Yeah.
Over on my side, you guys disappeared.
Oh, nice.
But we're back now.
Well, it's your story versus our story, and if you were a child,
yeah, well,
we wouldn't believe you in this.
I need the proof, James. I need the proof.
Right.
To me. What were you saying, Simon? You broke up that one part.
I was just saying that all adults that work with children, whether that's in an educational setting, a medical setting, a youth setting, they need to be trained to look for signs that something is wrong, because a child who's being abused isn't going to go around with a sign and say, I'm being abused.
True.
In a lot of cases, they won't speak about it. Unless they are made to feel that they're safe, unless people recognize these signs and try and proper professionals who are trained in safeguarding actually help them unlock what's going on, whether that's specially trained police officers or whoever it might be. But you need to fundamentally change the way you see child protection, because until you do that, you're never going to sort out these problems. And it's about, do not ever disbelieve a child. That you must always accept what they're saying, an investigation will determine the truth. It's not
Right.
for a teacher or a doctor or a youth worker to determine guilt or innocence. It's for an investigation to do that. And but it's for you to make sure you signpost that child, you get that child to where they need to be so that they're safe.
Right.
And
There's only one problem with that, Simon. It's called money. Okay? These Christian institutions are all about one thing: money. How much money can I get? How much money can I line my pockets with? Okay? Guy comes in, doesn't have much education, no training. Like I said, heroin addict, ex-heroin addict, found Jesus. Come on in. We'll pay you $100 a month. Okay, good, fine. That's why you see a lot of these people who are in this troubled teen industry, which is $1 billion industry, driving around in Porsches, right, James?
Yeah. Right.
Getting nice houses, brand new, everything. It's because it's all about the money. It's not about helping kids. They could give a shit about helping kids. They want the money.
Business.
It's a business.
It's a business. It's for-profit business. They're trying to make money.
And the whole point is to sap as much money out of the parents as they can. That's why they.
Right.
That's why when you're saying, James, you're going to be here until you graduate.
Right. Well, and now finding out it even goes past that. Now they're offering, transition programs to help the kid transition to back home, and check-in programs. So it's even when you take your kid out of Agape, they have one of the staff members there offers a service through his website. He offers a service that helps transport the kids to the school where you pay for that. And then even after they leave the school, he offers a service that says, hey, it's going to be hard for your kid to transition from Agape to the real world and maybe just keep making the right choices because he's out of this environment. I'll help you with that. I'll do Zoom calls. I'll check in on him, and I'll be doing this stuff to make sure that he's staying on the straight and narrow and doing the right things. And you just have to pay me, a few $1,000s a month, and I'll do this for you to make sure he stays good. So they're even trying to tap into the parents even afterwards, and they're using fear. When he leaves Agape, when he leaves this program, he's going to be back into his old friends, his old everything, and he's probably going to screw up again. Let us help you with that, and just keep paying us some more money.
Right.
Big deal. It's for Jesus.
Plus, you got other programs. The football program, like at Agape, that's not free. The parents got to pay extra for that. Oh, and by the way, we're going to be doing a donation drive. Can you come on and donate more money? My goodness, man.
They're doing they're doing a jogathon or whatever, trying to raise money. And for every lap, what can you get your parents to donate per lap that you run? Give us some more money to raise so we could buy some more exotic animals, so we can put it on on the website that we have freaking giraffes from Africa and lions here. It's like, who cares? How is therapy for kids? They don't even see these things.
And these parents are just shelling out this money, to the point where they're almost homeless. Some, not all, under this illusion that this place is helping their kids.
It took one aunt and uncle and my other aunt and uncle and my grandma, all three of them, to put money into this thing to keep me there at Agape for the 3 years I was there. Like, it took all of them putting their finances together, and also to the point where they didn't have the money even to come visit me. So they're paying the tuition, they didn't even have the money to fly out to visit me and stuff. So, but to go back to something that you're saying, Simon, also the thing that happens here in the state, I was part of a court case where a mom was trying to keep her son from being sent to Agape by her ex-husband. And they're trying to, he was taking her to court to have the court say, you got to go to Agape. So I was a witness, and I was, sharing my story, my experience on the podcast, and my experience as well, and everything like that. And it took so much emotion to hold, or so much self-control to hold down my emotion, because the ex-husband's attorney or lawyer, whoever the hell she was, after I shared all these stories and these, just a summary of everything that's happened and all this podcast, and even up to recently, she said, you know what, James, are you aware that there was a school in Florida similar to Agape that also had multiple allegations of physical abuse from the students and past students that went on? And after an extensive investigation into those accusations, they turned out to be all false. What do you have to say? And I was like, Well, just because one place that happened doesn't mean they're all false. Are you trying to tell me that just because one instance of a child saying he was abused turned out to be false, that means you should devalue and dismiss every other accusation
Allegation.
of child
Yeah.
abuse ever? Yeah. Like, are you stupid? But from a legal standpoint, she thought that this was a solid thing to bring to the case.
You're breaking up again.
This, even,
But I guess that's about money as well, though. Isn't
True.
It? That's about
yeah, it's very true. Yeah, because these people have the money.
Well,
They have the money to pay for these lawyers.
Yeah, it's kind of like rape. Yeah, there are a few women that scream rape when it's
Yeah.
false, but that doesn't mean
True.
you like you said, devalue all the other rapes that actually happened. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right, but that's what happens is like one of these guys will, or one of these kids that came out of this school will exaggerate their story or share something false or whatever, and that is used as a means of ammunition against everyone else's story. It's like, well, the adult comes out, that's not really what happened. He was misbehaving. That's why we restrained him. And the kid's like, well, they abused me. They did this to me. And the adult comes from this very calm, emotional level ground of saying, no, that's not what happened. Little Jimmy was just out of control and we had to restrain him, and then people typically over here take the side of the more calm, emotionally composed individual and the adult that's like saying these things versus the mid 20-year-old that's saying that they were abused in a program. And it's just,
Yeah.
How did the judge sum up in that case that you were just telling us about?
it ended up being that they agreed to send the child to a school that was local there in that state, but then from my understanding that school, I guess they didn't accept them, and so last I heard that Agape was on the roadmap. So a judge in another state, right, came to the conclusion based off everything that they had heard that this child that had these behavioral issues and on behavioral medication, everything. Agape, this religious institution in a whole nother state, is where that this child should go, and so they ruled in favor of the ex-husband of sending the kid to Agape. So it's like, digest that for a second. A judge in a whole nother state, a government official said, yes, you know what, your child needs to go to this religious institution in this a whole nother state. Like,
It's why these sorts of cases need to be held by specially trained judges who are experts in
yes,
both child protection and family interventions, because I don't know the judge obviously that ruled on this case, but in this country, not that you would ever get a case like that because you couldn't have a child sent to somewhere so like that, but a child in need of crisis intervention will probably go to our court of protection, which is a specialist court which has incredibly specially trained judges who are designed to make sure they consider the rights of the child or the rights of the vulnerable person, to make sure that they are, what's being done is in their absolute best interest. So again, it's part of the change that I think needs to happen. That we recognise that standard courts aren't a fit place for young people,
right,
because we have, our justice system has specific branches for juveniles and deals with them in a different way to the adult court system, for example, and that's quite important, because one fundamental thing about a child is a child makes mistakes, and so you have to account for the fact that a child makes mistakes, because making mistakes is how you learn, and so you can't just completely write a child off for making a few errors of judgment.
Right.
Now, obviously, if it's a particularly heinous or serious offence, then that needs to be looked at in a separate entity. But say vandalism or theft or things like that, you can't brand a child who commits an act of vandalism or steals just from shoplifting or what have you. You can't brand them in the same way as an adult, because
Right.
a child thinks differently. Children don't think about their actions before they generally carry them out. So you have to let them make mistakes, help them understand the consequences of those mistakes, and then let them mature and grow up and continue to be productive members of society.
Well, from what I understand, being the separation of church and state in this country, the courts are not supposed to send kids to religious institutions because that would go against, the separation of church and state. But they're doing it. Somehow they're getting away with it. So.
Yeah, well,
Oh my goodness.
It wasn't a religious.
You're breaking up, James. You're breaking up. Yeah. You sound robotic.
Oh really? Oh.
Yeah. Hey, if you go on those three dots, see if you can bring down your quality, your video quality. Maybe that might help. So like standard or something like that.
Yeah, it's on HD.
Yeah, bring it down.
Wow.
That might help.
Oh, we lost Chase. Do you see me fine, Simon?
I see you fine, yeah.
Yeah, you and Simon are both
he's
frozen.
A problem. Yeah, actually, we lost him again, right? I just changed my video quality down to standard.
I don't see any of you. I don't see Simon or you, James.
Dude, we're at 2 hours, man.
Okay. You wait for them to come back on?
Who's recording it?
Oh,
there he is. Hey.
We're back.
So we did come to a conclusion while you were gone. That I asked him, I was like, "Are you seeing me fine? Is everything?" He's like, "Yeah, you're fine. You're clear." So, but I did move it down to standard just for the heck of it. But I think it might be your connection because it shows little red bars for you. It says
for me.
Yeah, over here.
Says your connection's poor.
That's America for you.
Not judging you or anything like that, but just that's.
Yeah, well, we're in the middle of a snowstorm here too, so that could probably be doing.
Oh, that's probably it.
Yeah, we're getting hit. There, you guys are sounding better.
Cool.
You guys are looking good, man. You guys are looking good.
Yeah, we got Wisconsin, California, and the UK.
Okay, yeah. Are you Southern England or Northern England?
Northern England.
Northern, close to Ireland, huh?
Well, not that close, but yeah, we're
to us is close.
Or Wales? Is it Wales? It's Wales, right?
Wales, yeah.
Yes.
There is a sea dividing us between Ireland.
Okay. Right.
But yeah, Wales, not too far. Well, a few hours from Wales, but I suppose in American terms, it's next door.
Okay.
It's just it's a short swim, right?
Just hop, skip, and a jump, as they say.
Yeah.
So yeah, like James said, we're going on 2 hours. You guys want to kind of give some final thoughts? I mean, we could do this again. This is very informative for a lot of the people that are going to be listening to this. So, especially like I said, we have I don't want to give it away, but me and James have got a special podcast coming up.
Yeah,
on Tuesday. That's going to be. I guess I would say it's going to be the other side of the coin. I'll just leave it at that. It's going to be it's going to be interesting to hear this person.
Going from having all students to now having an outside country perspective to having this one that we're going to have on Tuesday it's starting to branch off. And Simon, thank you for being open to doing doing this, because I feel like this opens the Pandora's box to get other people's opinions besides just survivors from the programs, So thank you for taking the time to do this. And I know it's like, was it like 4 a.m. over there right now? So
No, I've got 10 at night, not that bad.
10 at night. Okay.
So some of our conversations do tend to quite extend into the early hours of the morning over here because of the fact it's normal afternoon in California. But but no, as I said to you, James, when you asked me, I thought about it and I thought, well, I've said to you that it's important to keep going, and I can't and not stand up and support it as well. So, and I would say to any parents who are thinking of sending a child to any place, whether it's there or wherever, don't believe anything that you're told, anything that you see written down. Prove it to be fact. Do your own investigations. Look at all sorts. Look at all the websites that are available and all the information that's publicly available to cross-reference things to make sure that it's accurate. Because that's the only way of knowing. And unfortunately, you will see people can be quite persuasive in the way that they use phraseology on websites to make an interpretation on something. But what you as parents, you need to know as fact that wherever you're going to send your child is the best place for them. So ask to see reports, ask to see the annual reports that maybe they should have got produced. Ask to see the grades that students are getting. Ask to see all this documentation. Don't just kind of say, oh yeah, I'll send it there. Make those places prove to you they're as good as they claim to be.
Well, sometimes, and I've noticed this a lot. A lot of parents will hear about Agape or any other type of home from a friend at church. Oh, I sent my daughter or my son to this home, and they came out great. Oh, okay. Well, I'll send my kid there. So that without any research, without even checking it out, they just do it because a religious friend of theirs said it was good. So that's all they need. That's all the proof they need. And sometimes it works out, very seldom, but most of the time it backfires right in their face.
There's no reason in 2021 to not do research because so much information is at people's fingertips these days. And if you think back to the early 90s seems to have kind of been the rocket birth of a lot of these places, but there wasn't the publicly held information in those days. So if you wanted to try and research somebody, you'd have to go and visit the local libraries to look at journals and things to try and find this information. But it's all at your fingertips today. So there's no excuse for not doing the research, for not finding out every bit of information, because why on earth would you entrust somebody with the safety of your child that you haven't researched in encyclopedic depth? Because you should be making sure that your child is safe. That should be your paramount concern. And if somebody's saying to you that we're not going to let you speak to your child, that should be a red flag.
Right.
Yeah. We can't see you.
To speak to your child.
We can't see you, James.
I can see James.
Oh, I can't see.
We lost you again.
There we
Jason.
go. Oh, lost.
Oh.
Sorry. It must be Agape fiddling with the knobs. That's probably what it is.
I know, man. They're on to you, bro.
I know.
And what you're saying, Simon, as well. Like some of the research that Simon's done, you can't share it all here, but it's stuff. I mean, he's just done some Googling and looking around on the internet and finding stuff and finding out that this a certain program will say they're accredited, but then you look into who accredits them, and when you look into who accredits them, it's a accreditation program that's owned by the same school that's saying they're accrediting themselves and like stuff like that. Like if you do the research, if you really dive into it, you can find this information. But I think to what you're saying too, Jason, these parents, at no fault of their own, they're desperate and whatnot, but they're just accepting it at face value that based off the marketing they're seeing and the word of mouth recommendation they're getting, that it's a good place. And they're like, well, it must be.
Yeah. Their friend tells them about Agape, how great it is. They go to the website, they see this fabulous, majestic website that's great, got the kids smiling on the pictures, and okay.
Horses,
Enough said. I'm going to send my kid there. That's the greatness of marketing for Agape.
But I would say compare it to another school, not troubled teen school. Just pick a random boarding school in America, compare it to that boarding school, and see what the differences are between what's offered. Because no matter what you pick, you'll see the glaring differences, and that's a good way of things standing out. You compare the two side by side, and you think, well, hang on, for a similar amount of money, they do this, and this. Why don't they do this, and this? So you don't necessarily see that comparing it to another troubled teen institution, because they're kind of all the same game. But when you compare it to somebody outside of that, you really see, the differences. I mean, a standout thing to me as well was the statement that Agape put out about the Kansas Star stuff. Yeah. Now, in England, in the United Kingdom, there's been lots of stories on the news about different schools and things where historical abuse has been found to be happening, or what have you. And their replies almost always start something along the lines of, "We're absolutely horrified to learn that this abuse could have happened in our institution, and we're determined to investigate to make sure that we can prove that it has or hasn't happened, that they learn from that and do everything we can to ensure that the children in our care is as safe as possible." And it's like it didn't say that.
None of that.
It shocked me how eager they were to put the responsibility back onto the troubled teens, rather than actually say, we may have had some problems in the past. We're keen to investigate to learn from that and make sure that still isn't going on. But there was just nothing in that, and that what made me go, wow, that's a bit of a bizarre response.
James, I can't see you. I'm sorry.
I'm still here. Hello.
Oh, I can hear you. I can hear you, but I can't see you. That's okay. I know exactly what you're saying. It's one of those things that, gullible parents. Yep, I got you.
Maybe that's what happens. It seems to be my video cuts out, and then it's actually him.
Oh no, your video's back, and Simon's is gone, but we can still hear you. It's just one of those things, where like James was saying, they'll just take it at face value. And the troubled teen institutions need to be held accountable and not blame the students, which is exactly what they're doing. Oh, go ahead.
That's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because they talk about the fact that the teenagers need to learn accountability, but then who's holding them to account? Where's their accountability? Right. Because if you read the various websites, the way they try and interact with the parents, the parents, if they're, like say James, who's sent there for 3 years, they're paid potentially $120,000. That's you could buy a house for that in some states. So that parent is a customer of a huge amount of money, and yet the way they talk to that parent is horrendous. And I can't think of any other financial transaction of that size of money that you would make and allow yourself to be talked to in that way. It's just.
I'm sorry to laugh, but that's a really good point.
But $120,000, James, I can honestly say that your parents paid for Brian's house. When you think about it,
and
of course
that's true.
Their education is shit, basically. It's shit. It's unaccredited. It's garbage. The only place you could probably get it a good a college degree, right? A college degree would be Jack Hiles. That's it.
Oh no.
Every other college is going to say, nope, we don't want that shit. That's garbage. It's unaccredited.
Yeah.
So.
Right. I think I get what you're saying. You cut out the stuff.
Oh, did I?
If you can go outside and ask the snow to stop, I think we should be good. Yeah. I'm really curious to see what it does with recording. Because obviously there's the 3 different variations. Like you're seeing one, Jason, Simon's seeing another, I'm seeing another. So I'm wondering what it's going to do. Hopefully, it takes them all and puts them together into the recording, but we'll see.
Well, my video is never going to go out because it's on the recording end. But you guys are going in and out. Like right now, I can see you, James, but I can't see Simon.
Oh, interesting.
All I see is a circle with a big green S. That's all I see.
Superman. I knew it.
but I can hear Simon though. I can hear him. Oh, there you go. He's back.
Okay,
on.
good.
Yeah. I apologize.
Good.
Like I said, we're going through a snowstorm. The Packers are losing right now, so it's. I know.
A bunch of stuff all happening.
Another comment I made to James as well was why in 2021 are these places not letting children make video calls to their families so they can both see each other?
Dude, he said that the other day to me. He's like, it's 2021. How come they're not letting the kids do like a FaceTime call or some kind of video conferencing call with their kids? And like, why is it still some archaic phone? I'm surprised they don't have the ring
rotary dial.
Yeah. Or a switchboard and But why aren't they doing video calls? Why? And Simon brought up a good point too. He's like, if I was a parent, I would demand a video call. Be like, look, I have a camera and a webcam. I'll send it to you. I'll send you a laptop of mine. That way I can do a video call with my kid. Like he also pointed out how they're able to stream their church services. So they know how to do it. They understand technology to that extent. Why can't they have video conferencing for kids?
I think the reason why they don't want to see their kid with that creepy guy in the background looking at them.
Right, that's true. Yeah, and you can control the phone calls a lot more than you can control video. If say the mom decides to bring the girlfriend onto the video to say hi or something, or something obscene or something like that's why. But
and of course, being a parent myself, you can see the look on the kid. You know what I mean? When the kid kind of looks at you like, please, you could basically say it without saying it. Please get me out of here. You know what I mean? That they could just give that look, like, oh my goodness, please get me out of here. And I'm sure that's not what they want. They want the parents to see that look of sadness or the look of depression on the face of these kids. All right, so Simon, are you there?
Yeah. Oh, can you hear? I think maybe we should call it before because it seems like it's getting worse.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think
there we go.
It seems like it seems like it's getting worse.
All right.
Yeah. But I guess you want to close it out, Jason, just before I feel bad it's getting
sure.
So choppy.
Like I said, if you guys want to stay on for a few minutes and one of the podcast, but thanks everybody for watching. A few little technical difficulties there. Like I said, we have here in Wisconsin, we got the snow started. We're getting like 2 to 4 inches now, but that just kind of makes the connections kind of bad. But seriously, it does. It does. I mean, and of course, here in America, we do have some shitty connections. So it's not like in England. It's not like England or Japan where you can you get these really nice connections, and they charge an arm and a leg for it. But anyway, everybody, thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. The channel is growing exponentially. Thanks to everybody. Like I said, we have a special podcast coming up on Tuesday. You don't want to miss. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. That way you can get the notification. And I want to thank Simon for coming on. It was very informative. I hope to have him on again. And James, you're an awesome help, invaluable. So, but for the Hammer Podcast, I'm Jason. You take care of yourself. You take care of each other. We'll see you next time.